Next talk is by Dr. Makarand Damle, sir. Topic is symptoms of allergic rhinitis, impact on quality of life.
Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, before I start my talk, I would like to thank the Solapur ENT Association for this gracious invite for the talk. I would also like to acknowledge Sanofi for their support and academic inputs for this talk. Today, though the topic of my talk is symptoms of allergic rhinitis and their impact on quality of life, I'm going to concentrate on nasal congestion, which is the most bothersome symptom of allergic rhinitis, and it does have a tremendous effect on quality of life in patients with allergic rhinitis. Why this is important is that when we look at diseases like malignancies, for example, we look at 5-year life expectancy or survival rates. But in chronic lifestyle illnesses like allergic rhinitis, nasal congestion, blockage leads to a lot of loss of productivity, and the effect on quality of life is tremendous. So treating symptoms, I know that we have to treat the disease and not just the symptoms, but treating the symptom is as important as treating the disease. So I'll quickly run through what we've already heard from the previous speakers. We know how to diagnose allergic rhinitis, we know the pathophysiology. But if you look at the pathophysiology of late allergic rhinitis, there is a lot of remodeling of submucous tissue. There is accumulation of lymphocytes, macrophages, neutrophils, eosinophils, and this leads to a lot of congestion, mucosal and turbinate hypertrophy. So all these patients who are runners in early allergic rhinitis end up becoming blockers in late allergic rhinitis. And as we can see, that nasal congestion becomes a predominant symptom of late allergic rhinitis, and it contributes to poor quality of life, especially in those 20% of patients who have concomitant asthma. Of course, when you look at allergic rhinitis, there can be other causes of nasal blockage, which also have to be diagnosed. So if a patient has say a severe deviated nasal septum, or if a patient has very severe inferior turbinate hypertrophy, or you have a whiteout CT like we have on the left side, then obviously these things will have to be surgically treated. Otherwise, no amount of medical therapy is going to help you. We've, I think, gone through this. So now we are going to basically concentrate on the different modalities or therapeutic options that we have for treating patients with long-standing allergic rhinitis. So the 3 or 4 modalities that I'm going to talk about are, one is fexofenadine, second is fexofenadine with pseudoephedrine, intranasal azelastine with fluticasone furoate, and like what was mentioned just now, intranasal fluticasone furoate with oxymetazoline, something which has been available for the last 1 or 2 years. Fexofenadine hydrochloride, as we know, is a potent and selective non-sedating H1 receptor antagonist. It has been used for a long period of time, and it has a proven clinical efficacy. Head-to-head trials suggest that fexofenadine offers distinct advantages compared to other antihistamines, and a lot of data is available for that. It has also been shown to be more effective than loratadine when it comes to relieving symptoms of nasal congestion. Also, we know that its effects are comparable to cetirizine and levocetirizine, which till now have been the gold standard for treatment of allergic rhinitis. We also got a study where we compared fexofenadine with pseudoephedrine as a combination, and the effects of fexofenadine with pseudoephedrine when compared to fexofenadine alone were a tad better, and they had a very good effect on nasal congestion when compared with fexofenadine alone. Leukotriene receptor antagonists like montelukast have been available for a long time, and as Vikram has highlighted just now, that nowadays they do come with a black box warning. So long-term usage is something that we need to be a little wary about, though their efficacy in treatment of nasal congestion for patients with allergic rhinitis is also very well documented. Now, when we compare effects of montelukast with fexofenadine and montelukast with levocetirizine, Again, fexofenadine, Montelukast does stand up to the test of time and efficacy both. And though again we talk about levocetirizine being the gold standard, I think fexofenadine also holds its own. The safety profile of fexofenadine and the side effect profile of fexofenadine is definitely better than levocetirizine. So especially working class of patients, patients who are in critical area jobs like pilots need to be treated with really non-sedating antihistamines. The role of intranasal corticosteroids is well documented. They do help in reduction of nasal congestion. They do help in treatment of sleep-related disturbances, and multiple meta-analyses have shown their efficacy. Intranasal steroid and decongestant combinations like fluticasone furoate and oxymetazoline, which is available nowadays, have shown fantastic results when you're looking at their effect on nasal congestion. What is important to note that oxymetazoline, with its potential for causing rhinitis medicamentosa, is well documented. So therapy has to be short-term. It cannot be a long-term therapy. As of now, there are no studies which show the potential for side effects as well as systemic side effects. So these need to be used carefully. They cannot be used randomly. So to summarize, allergic rhinitis and AR-related nasal congestion are associated with a lot of morbidity. They do increase substantially the healthcare costs. Nasal congestion is one of the most frequently reported and troublesome symptoms. Allergic rhinitis obviously needs accurate diagnosis, and treatment of symptomatology is as important as treatment of the disease itself. Nasal congestion plays a very important role in the negative effects of AR on sleep and daily related activities. Now here what is most important is a lot of times patients have dissatisfaction with the therapy that they are receiving, and there may be a discontinuation of treatment on the part of the patient. And a patient who does not follow up is not a patient who is treated or relieved of his symptoms. So sometimes we may be guilty of overestimating our treatment and overestimating our patient's treatment satisfaction. So adequate follow-up and keeping in touch with our patients and assessing them for the improvement of their symptoms is very important. Thank you.